Hi everyone. Grace and I are here to talk about UX. Actually, first I wanted to spend a minute and talk a little bit about kitchens. Might sound weird, but we know that kitchens are where we prepare the food that sustains us. And for a lot of people, it's also the social and family center of the home. That's why it's hardly a surprise that a lot of homeowners spend a lot of time, money, and effort doing makeovers on their kitchens. Maybe they're starting out with a cramped space and they want some place that's more efficient and friendly to cook in and hang out in. Maybe they just want better storage, more ready access to the tools that they like to use. And of course, everyone just likes a clean, inviting, bright space to hang out in. So why am I starting off by talking about kitchens? Well, a kitchen makeover can turn a dated, poorly laid out space into a room that you really want to spend time in. Likewise, we're going to be talking about UX makeovers. You can take an app that you're using to do your work with, and it can start off as a chore, but with a great UX makeover, you can turn that to be a real joy to use.
So, as Charles mentioned, there are a variety of reasons why you might choose to do a UX makeover. On the one hand, maybe you're taking a legacy system and updating it to use Appian. And then on the other hand, perhaps you already have an Appian application and you'd like to update it to use all the modern new features of 19.2. No matter what your reason, we want you to think about 4 things when you're considering doing a user experience makeover. At its base, it's vital that your application is functional. This means that all of the requirements are met and that your users can perform their work. This used to be enough, but now in 2019, your users expect a lot more out of their applications. Your users expect their applications to be efficient. This means that they can complete their work in a minimum amount of time with a minimum number of steps. They also expect their applications to be intuitive. This means that a new user can walk up to your application and just get started. And on top of all of that, if that wasn't enough, users expect their applications to be beautiful. They want a contemporary, harmonious, and appealing appearance, and they want to use your application and do their job. A lot of people, when thinking about user experience, only think about that top one. They only think about making their applications beautiful. But in reality, in order to have a great user experience, all 4 of these things need to be met. Today, we're going to show you 3 fictional user experience makeovers in Appian, so you can get some ideas of how to do this for your users. First, we're going to meet the user. We're going to learn about their pain points. We're going to learn about what's most important to them. And last, we'll show you this great new UX experience that we've given these users using Appian.
So we're calling our first story the swivel chair. We're talking about Aaron, who is an insurance claims representative. So when a homeowner suffers a loss like fire or wind or hail damage, they call Aaron up to start the claims process. His current IT system is pretty terrible. We call it a swivel chair experience because he's got 4 different applications, 4 different windows across different monitors. He's got to move back and forth and copy and paste information across these different apps. There's one system that actually handles the incoming call. There's a second system that has the customer information, a third system where they manage their claims, and finally a 4th separate system to schedule a visit from an adjuster to the home. What Aaron really needs is a much more efficient solution, so he can spend time helping the customer instead of wrangling these separate software applications. Here's a look at the made-over UX that we built for Aaron. There's a lot going on this one screen because what we did, again, was to take what was on 4 separate applications and 4 windows and move it onto one page. But let me break it down what you're seeing here. On the left, you've got call controls. So Aaron can take calls, transfer them, end the call. There's also a place for him to take notes as he's talking to the customer so that he can record what they're asking for and what they decided. There's an automatic activity log that records the progress of the call. So when his manager wants to come back later or the customer calls back on a subsequent day, they can look at what happened. And finally, on the bottom, there are performance metrics so Aaron can see how he's doing towards the targets as manager has set for him. At the top of the page is a summary information about the customer. So we know who the customer is, their history, we see their active insurance policies. And when we pick one, in the center of the screen, there's all the information about the policy. In the left column, there's a summary of the property that's being covered by this insurance policy. In the middle are the types and amounts of the coverages. And then most importantly for Aaron, on the right are the actions that he can take. So he can choose to make a new claim right from the screen. And then what happens is that he is faced with a sequence of guided choices, but parts of the screen remain consistent. The call controls and so forth are still on the left. The summary of the customer is still on the top. But we use the middle screen to show him whichever question he needs to deal with next. So for instance, instead of a separate system for scheduling the adjuster visit, we just show all the available times here. So we've turned this from being a swivel chair experience with 4 completely different apps into one where exactly the right information and controls are shown on one screen in Appian, right where he needs it. Some of the tips and tricks in Appian design that we kept in mind when we built this makeover. One is you may think that it's always better to keep things simple and show very few things on one screen because that's more intuitive. That may be the case for some situations, but for power users who are using an app day in and day out, it's often better just to put everything that they need on one screen, as long as it's well organized. So as we walk through, the structure of the page is consistent. Aaron always knows where to find what he's looking for, but we're packing that screen full of what he needs. Secondly, even though we're showing a lot of information on the screen, we do want to anchor it with some persistent things. So the call controls, the customer summary, it's always where he wants to be able to find it. And lastly, this is an example of using the ICC framework that's available for Appian, where you can have your Twilio or Genesis call controls right in your interface. So instead of having to have a separate window, you can just put those elements right on your screen next to your customer and claims management tools and so forth.
Thanks, Charles. The second story we're going to talk about today is Bridget, a home health aide. We've called her story the paper pusher. Bridget is a home health care worker who works primarily in independent living facilities for seniors. Her primary job is to make sure that the healthcare statistics are taken for her patients, but on top of that, it's just as important that Bridget visits with her patients and makes a personal connection with them. For many of her patients, this is the only outside visitor they see every day, so it's really important that she's able to focus on them. Because of this, however, Bridget used to use paper forms, which made it very difficult to learn her job and to do her job. This is because she has different types of visits every day, and only certain measurements need to be taken for certain patients. Additionally, it's hard to keep track of past patient data when you're looking at it on paper. Third, when using paper, there are no automated checks for mistakes, so it's possible that Bridget could enter incorrect data and not even realize it. And fourth, keeping track of patient data on paper poses greater risks of compliance issues, including the wrong data ending up in the wrong hands. What Bridget really needs is an intuitive, guided user experience that helps her focus her attention on her patients. Let's take a look at the UX makeover we gave Bridget. This is the first screen that Bridget looks at every day. It's her schedule, so she can see how many visits she has that day, where they are, what type of visit it is, and how long she has in between appointments. We've chosen to give Bridget a mobile application because she's what we would consider a field service worker, so she's constantly on the go and does not bring her laptop with her. Each card is clickable, so she can choose to click in and get more information about her appointments. So let's do that. Once she clicks in, she's looking now at patient details for a patient named Effie Wheeler, who she's going to see at 11:45 a.m. today. On the screen, she can see that she's very close to her next appointment location, and from here she can either choose to get directions or start the appointment. One thing I want to point out about this screen is that a lot of the information is centered. When you're designing interfaces that are primarily for mobile usage, it's really good to center align the information because that's part of what gives it a distinctly mobile look and feel. So let's click to start the appointment and watch the process. What we've done for Bridget is given her a process that guides her step by step through all of the checks that she needs to do on every visit. The first thing that she sees is a question to ask what Effie's heart rate is. What we've done here is prompt Bridget with a single question at a time. When you're working on mobile, the phone real estate screen is very small and the tap area also needs to be specific. So what we've done here is give her one question at a time so that she can focus on what she's doing and not miss any of the information. Next, the app prompts Bridget to enter Effie's weight. What we see is that the application is pre-filled with the previous weight that Effie had. This means that Bridget only needs to scroll slightly in order to enter the new weight, which is helpful to make sure that she enters the correct data. However, if she doesn't, the application is going to validate and ask Bridget to confirm if she really wanted to enter something that was so much higher than the previous value, or if she wants to enter something new. This is the type of thing you can do to help with data validation and make sure that the data is entered correctly. Lastly, for today's demo, the application asks Bridget to enter the blood pressure. It asks her to enter only one value at a time because on mobile we want to make sure that the data is entered correctly and that Bridget is able to focus on her patients. Today, however, the value that Bridget entered is high. As a seasoned healthcare professional, Bridget already knew that this value was high, but we want to make sure that there's no way she could possibly miss this really important information. Here we've used a new line chart that Bridget can zoom in to get a closer look at the data, and here we see that the high blood pressure is out of the ordinary. What the application is going to do for her now is to prompt her to run a quick interview with her patient and discover that the reason Effie's blood pressure is high might be because she's been forgetting to take her information, and from there, Bridget can continue on and dig into ways to remedy this issue. So what we've done for Bridget is take her out of a paper experience and give her an intuitive, guided experience to help her deliver quality healthcare and pay attention to her patients. Let's take a look at some of the tips and tricks that we used to give Bridget this user experience makeover. I've mentioned this already, but I can't stress it enough. When you're working on mobile, we've chosen to ask one question at a time. The amount of information that a user can take in on mobile is a lot smaller than it is on web, and you should think about this if you're designing for a mobile-first use. Second, I chose to use the new line chart to explore time series data. In 19.2, we're releasing a new version of A-Bang line chart field, which allows you to view up to 35,000 data points on one screen without scrolling. This works on web and on mobile, and what you can do, as Bridget did, is zoom in or pan in to see a closer look at the data and reset it. If you're already using a line chart, your line chart will continue to work, but we recommend you upgrade to the newest version if you have a lot of data to show, and especially if that data is time series based. Third, we heard about it this morning, but in this application, we also used a component plugin. The Google Maps was a component plugin that is available for download on Appian community and works with 19.2. Some component plugins work on web and mobile, as this Google Maps component plugin does, and what it enables Bridget to do is to see how far she is from her next appointment without needing to leave the Appian application. And fourth, if you're creating applications for mobile, we recommend you use the form factor preview that's available in Interface Designer in the top right corner. By using the form factor preview, you can get a look at what the functionality and behaviors are going to be on the mobile application and how they might differ slightly from the web application, all without leaving your desktop.
Thanks, Grace. Last story, we're calling the cookie cutter. We're here to meet Carol. She works for a private art collection, and what needs to happen is that curators from other galleries or museums, they might want to borrow some of the collection's artwork to stage their own exhibits. So they have to contact Carol and arrange for that loan request. So today, the process, we describe it as being cookie cutter because it just involves generic tools. The parties exchange emails, they exchange spreadsheets, sometimes they even fax paperwork back and forth. And of course, as an art collection, you care a lot about your brand, about the aesthetics involved in the experience of anyone who's interacting with you. And Carol's not happy with the current experience because it's just like the same experience as interacting with any other organization. So what she needs is a beautiful Appian app for the loan request process. Of course, as with every other app, it's assumed that it needs to be functional, it should be intuitive to use, it should be efficient for power users, but again, most of the time you also want to make sure that it looks great. So this is the UX that we prepared for her. The welcome page looks like it could be part of a custom web homepage. We're using colors, we're using brand images and photography just to convey the sense of the brand identity that the collection wants to express. Next, we step into the beginning of the loan request with a nice, simple page that walks the user through what the key steps are going to be so they know what to expect. When you head into the loan request, then the artwork is front and center. We have this gallery view here where you can search and browse and filter and find the artwork that you want to add to your loan request. And for each item, you can drill in and see more details about it. You can view additional photographs for each piece of artwork. And then if you like, you can add it to your loan request. And finally, we have this calendar view where you can see available dates and you can decide on the beginning and end of the loan period that you want to make the request for. So we've turned this loan request experience from a cookie cutter one that uses generic tools into one that uses a beautiful Appian application. So let me talk a little bit more about some of the ideas that we kept in mind as we built this. First, this is a tough one to explain to people sometimes, but it's important often to choose a very restrained color scheme. In each release of Appian, we're adding more and more places where you can choose color, and sometimes people get carried away. You can have the header of the screen, you can have these billboards, charts, rich text, pick whatever color you want. And it's not always the case that more is better. We've shown an example here where essentially just by using one theme color, we've expressed something that's modern and on brand. Secondly, images, again, are something that you can use a lot of in Appian, and they can often be overused. In this case, we're talking about artwork, so it makes a lot of sense to make the images front and center, but sometimes they can just be excessive decoration. So be restrained here to use the right ones, and then they carry more weight when they are meaningful instead of just kind of gratuitous. And finally, we had talked in a previous example about how to have a dense packed screen for a power user, but in this situation, we're talking about more new users or occasional users. People aren't making artwork loan requests every day from this organization. It's likely going to be the first time that they're doing this, so it helps to have a friendly welcome just to give them a simple introduction to what's coming up and then walk them step by step through the process instead of trying to cram everything into one screen.
Let's review the applications that we looked at today. First, we saw how we can create an efficient, dense interface for power users such as Aaron. Next, we looked at creating an intuitive mobile experience to provide quality healthcare. And most recently, we saw a beautiful application that can inspire its users by being on brand. So now that you've seen what we can do in Appian, what's next? How do you take these ideas and create a great user experience makeover for your own users? We have quite a lot of ideas, so buckle up. You can take a closer look at the applications we've shown you today by downloading the presentation. It'll be available next week, and once you've downloaded it, you can zoom in and get a look at the applications we've shown today and get some inspiration. We also suggest that you visit the low-code app development booth and the Intelligent Contact Center booths over in the Sapphire Ballroom to get some hands-on experience and ask questions of our seasoned Appian practitioners. I'm very excited to announce that this summer we're releasing a new e-learning course on our Appian training platform called academy.appian.com. This course will be focused on user experience design, and it will cover topics such as creating a business use case for user experience, usability testing, and then specific tips and tricks for creating great Appian interfaces and using layouts appropriately. That should be available in about a month's time. If reading's more your style, I'd suggest that you look at the UX design guide that's available in our public-facing documentation today. This is at docs.appian.com, and it covers a similar type of content, such as presenting information clearly, using components like the side-by-side layout or cards as buttons, or basic information about creating accessible applications for users with disabilities. Lastly, Matt mentioned this in his keynote, but we have the Architect Services Reviews available for partners and customers, which provides you a comprehensive view of your application for a fee. And you can inquire about this from your account executive. So thank you for listening to our presentation and taking a look. We're also happy to chat